Welcome to your Friday the 13th episode of Forecast Lab. This is where the technically proficient weather professionals and amateurs gather. We don't dumb down the content with cheesy graphics. These are actual operational forecast charts, and we don't hype the content either, only the best for our viewers. As of the last update, still no La Nina developing. And with another California storm, it doesn't feel much like a La Nina year either. Let's take a look at the surface chart for last night. There's the main low pressure area. That's an occlusion. The Bear Clinic zone further south. That's roughly how the fronts are set up. And what you'll want to watch is up here. This is a fast-moving, compact packet of energy that links up with that frontal system later tonight. So this is going to be about 10 o'clock. So that's roughly how it looks. So California already getting some action, but it's going to intensify as that wave comes out of the Pacific. So yeah, some possibility of convective elements, maybe some thunder overnight off of the San Francisco area. Then everything comes inland for tomorrow. And another system heading into the West Coast area. This will go a little bit further to the north. And system number 3. So this is a ways out. That's for later next week. Let's take a look at the weather analysis for this afternoon. It has moderated a little bit in the northeastern U.S. Temperatures running about 10 to 25 degrees. It was much colder a couple days ago up there in North Dakota and Montana, so they are seeing a warming trend. Tropical air coming north out of Texas. Look at those dew points. Starting to see 60s and close to 70 degrees at Corpus Christi. And the appearance of a dry sector supporting a dry line from the Texas Caprock into the Big Bend. A Pacific weather system in the panhandles with a cold front extending into Arizona. And then, of course, off the west coast, there's our next weather system. In the Northeast, the big winter storm starting to come to a close as high pressure moves into the area. You can see across the Great Lakes on the visible imagery, starting to see some blue lake right there. So it is clearing out. And we go into the infrared since it is getting into nighttime. And we can also see the lakes, the relatively warmer water surfaces showing up there. Still some lake effect snows continuing in parts of New York around Oswego, Watertown, expecting 5 to 10 inches today before it gradually shuts down this evening. So that will be the end of our lake effect snow warnings. Cold air advection continues across New England into Maine. You can see those elements right there forming cloud streets since it is convectively unstable. Very cold air mass, but shallow instability. Another cold day in northern New York, 20s, and we've got 30s on the coast, and 40s in Virginia and Maryland. It is worth pointing out the strength of this anticyclogenesis, currently 1043, 1044 millibars by midnight up to 1046, and then by dawn showing as high as 1050 millibars in northern New York. The highest pressure ever recorded in December in Burlington, Vermont was 1051.1 millibars. That was Christmas Day of 1949. So that shows you how uncommon these very high pressures are in the northeastern U.S. We definitely see them on the high plains, but out in the northeastern U.S., very rare. The southeastern states also under high pressure. Temperatures this afternoon ranged from the 50s in the Carolinas, Atlanta, Birmingham, to the 60s and 70s in Florida. No real problems, but we do have strong onshore flow on the east coast of Florida. We have high surf advisories and rip current warnings across all of the Florida coast from Jacksonville to Miami. Coastal flood advisories also starting up this weekend due to high tides. In the southern plains, the Gulf is open. Warm conveyor belt feeding north from the Texas coast into the Ozarks, Kansas, and Missouri. precipitable water running as high as 1 inch up to the Ozarks and 1.5 inch on the Texas coast. Comparing that to the climatological normals, we're in the 90th percentile from Victoria, Corpus Christi, all the way to Oklahoma City. And those values spread northward up to the 97th percentile in northeastern Kansas, and we get an even stronger surge going into Sunday night. This is surge number 2, and you can see those values coming up close to the 99th percentile in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's going to be Sunday night and Monday. So we'll worry about that later, but out to the west you can see that characteristic S shape of an approaching baroclinic system. Not much moisture within that, but it does show that definitive comet cloud shape, and you've probably seen that before in textbooks and in real-life scenarios. And if we go to the water vapor imagery, it shows up even better. There it is, plume of moisture, dynamic lift, and that characteristic S shape, which indicates the presence of an upper level wave. So where is that wave? Let's take a look at the heights at 500 millibars and the Q vectors. We do see troughing across the Rockies. We bring that up to the current time. That little couplet right there, that's our upper level wave moving out into the panhandles, and that corresponds pretty closely to the location of that comet cloud. So obviously that's going to start interacting with that moisture that's flowing northward, and we see the upper level lift moving out into Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa later tonight. Here's how it looks on the surface chart. Obviously, we're not really seeing much here. Lots going on the satellite imagery, but at the surface, nothing really coming together just yet. However, we do see some of that overrunning the isentropic lift north of this southward cold front that runs from about Victoria to about Uvalde and Del Rio. So north of that, fog, drizzly, and cool conditions. The second front is further up to the north that divides these 50s around the Ozarks from the 30s and 20s further north. And we do see the characteristic southerly flow ahead of the pressure falls east of the Rockies. That cyclogenesis there helping to draw this southerly flow from the Gulf and bring those dew points up into the 50s and 60s. Heading up north, we are in the very early stages of a winter storm. In fact, this is going to be dominated by freezing rain for the most part, with snow further north. Already we've got freezing rain developing at Omaha at this hour. There's some bands of mid-level lift, nimbostratus, and some stratocumulus, all of that producing light freezing rain. The 32 line running from about Beatrice off towards Chillicothe. South of that, the precipitation is all in the form of rain. There's a look at the northern plains, mostly dominated by cirrus. Some heavier bands coming into Nebraska and Kansas as that upper level lift approaches from western Kansas and the panhandles. So all of that freezing rain taking place right in here, and it will get worse. We do have an ice storm warning in eastern Iowa, Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, Iowa City, Marshalltown. They will see freezing rain starting about midnight tonight into Saturday afternoon, and those accumulations could be about 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch. There could be power outages throughout that entire area due to downed limbs and wires. Surrounding that, a very large winter weather advisory from Minneapolis down into eastern Nebraska, covering all of Iowa, into parts of Minnesota and adjoining parts of Illinois, and I think Wisconsin, but basically this is the area, and within that we've got that ice storm warning right in there. In the southwestern U.S., fair skies from the Four Corners into the lower deserts. Temperatures this afternoon ranged from the 40s in the Great Basin area into the upper 60s around Yuma and Lake Havasu City. Further to the west, that winter storm moving inland, let's take a look at that. We look at the coastal sector, and we've got extensive cloud layers moving into the Bay Area, Sacramento, and the northern San Joaquin Valley. Heavy rains coming down from Fort Bragg to Eureka. We do have a winter storm warning through tomorrow in the Sierras, basically starting about right in here, all the way up the Sierras. This includes the interior areas, the deserts east of the Sierras. Talking about Mono Lake, just north of Bishop, into Lake Tahoe. We're expecting over 2 feet of snow, and as you go north, the higher elevations will get 3 feet of snow above 5,000 feet. So let's take a closer look at things. You can see some Thule fog there in the southern San Joaquin Valley around Tehachapi Pass to Bakersfield. That burns off pretty quickly, and then the cloud layers start spreading into Fresno and Bakersfield. Southern California looking pretty good, just some scattered low and mid cloud. Then as we go north, that's where we pick up the cloud layers. Let's take a look at the radar. And there you go. Rain bands moving inland. We do have high wind warnings across the Bay Area going into tomorrow morning. Winds could gust up to 60 miles an hour, especially in San Francisco, the Santa Cruz Mountains. Further inland, we have wind advisories late tonight into the midday hours tomorrow for winds gusting to 55 miles an hour. That includes San Jose and parts of the inland Bay Area. In the northwestern U.S., the Rockies in between weather systems, but you can see the advance of those strong dynamics. There's the leading edge right there, one band across Oregon, another in Washington, and that heralds the approach of upper-level lift spreading into the area. We have a winter weather advisory for the Cascades into northern Oregon and Washington that runs tonight through Saturday morning for mixed precip, about 1 to 5 inches of snow, a glaze of icing that includes Yakima, Wenatchee, Omak, and most of the foothills, and into parts of Oregon south of the Dalles. Interstate 82 from Sunnyside westward is affected. Interstate 84 also in the mountains east of Pendleton to La Grande, above 4,500 feet, could see 7 to 10 inches of snow. And also Interstate 90 is affected west of the Columbia River. Wyoming has a winter storm warning for midday Saturday into Sunday, mostly this area around the Tetons, and that includes Jackson as well. We're looking for 2 to 6 inches of snow in the valleys with 2 feet in the higher elevations. And there's a winter storm watch as well for much of eastern Idaho, basically this area right there. 5 to 12 inches of snow in the valley floors and 2 feet in the mountains and passes. Okay, that is the summary of the weather in the lower 48. We head back out into the Pacific. There's our system on the west coast. Maritime polar air with a unstable cold air mass over warm surface, indicated by that K right there. Then as we go north into Alaska, it doesn't really look like much going on, but this is fairly significant. This is an incursion of Arctic air into the Alaska and Yukon interior, marked by this front right there. You can see that the temperatures in northern British Columbia and the valleys right there, that's rather warm, 25 degrees. Yeah, that's kind of toasty. That's where you want to get your barbecue grill out and throw some hot dogs on the fire. Also kind of mild in southern Yukon, but you go up north and we pick up wind chills and much colder air. The isentropic lift along this frontal surface has produced some heavy snow. Fairbanks recorded 10 to 12 inches of snow over the past 24 hours. They're sitting at 16 degrees right there. Liquid amounts around 3/4 of an inch. It's very unusual to get heavy snows in the Alaskan interior, so that is fairly significant. They've got a winter storm warning through today. 2 to 5 inches of additional snow expected for the remainder of today. Then we've got a cold weather advisory for late tonight. There could be wind chills down to minus 55 through the central and eastern Alaskan interior. We have blizzard warnings continuing along the coastal North Slope area, blowing snow and 45-mile-an-hour winds that should gradually subside through the weekend. Then dropping into Canada, really not any major weather going on except in the Vancouver, Victoria area. Vancouver Island, They have wind warnings starting out here for tonight on Vancouver Island and spreading into Vancouver, the city and metro area itself, for tomorrow. Winds could be around 40, gusting to 65 miles an hour. The prairies, cold, but no hazards or advisories warranted. We do have lake effect warnings, snow squall warnings continuing southeast of Georgian Bay and in the Sault Ste. Marie area. Then we have another winter storm in the interior of Quebec. Not many people living there. That's going to be in the La Grande reservoirs, in the deep Quebec interior, and there could be some heavy snow as that strong upper-level system with a reflection at the surface passes through that region. All right, let's take a look at the upper air charts, 500 millibars, to see what's on the way. This brings us up to the current time. There's that strong shortwave approaching the panhandles, the area of upper level lift, the comet cloud region, out ahead of that wave. So kind of focused in this area right there. And of course, that's approaching Iowa and Nebraska. So this is a rather potent, compact area of upper level lift. A lot of times you'll see those areas spread out similar to this, and those really don't bring much in the way of strong dynamics. That's mostly a shear pattern. But this, yeah, that's going to be kind of like a big snowball of energy heading into the central plains. So going into tonight, 1 a.m., the stronger lift coming into Kansas. So we'll start getting that interaction with that moisture, and then that spreads into eastern Kansas and eastern Nebraska for tomorrow morning, and gradually rolls out into the rest of the Midwest region for tomorrow. So that'll spread a mix of precipitation, rain, freezing rain up in Wisconsin, and snow further to the north. Some ridging building back in behind that across the plains that'll bring clearing through the central states, and of course our Pacific weather system starts to cross over into the Great Basin region. So you can kind of focus on your favorite area, some strong lift into the Pacific Northwest for early Sunday, and then gradually moving into the northern plains for Monday. Here's a band of strong upper-level energy. This is going to be a compact little wave right there in Colorado for early Monday, and that emerges into Kansas and Missouri during the afternoon on Monday. So, yeah, some rapidly changeable weather up there, alternating between fair skies and stormy conditions, and then we go into the remainder of the week. And, yeah, another northwesterly flow shortwave dropping south and carving out that trough, and rather potent right there in the Carolinas by Thursday. And then some ridging starting to build in, but this is a strong northwesterly flow pattern, and a pattern like that usually indicates cold conditions east of the Rockies. However, let's see if we're tapping any very cold air. Well, we've got minus 20s in Nunavut and minus 10s in Manitoba, but not a very large supply of that cold air. We do get some development of Arctic air in northern Yukon going into the weekend, and that grows in aerial extent into the Northwest Territories, into the Yukon River Delta up there in Alaska. So we probably will have to monitor that going into the later part of December, because that could always start kicking southward, and some very cold minus 30s and 40s in Nunavut as well. So we're starting to grow in aerial extent on that Arctic air. So that's going to be the very last frame, December 19th. So there is the potential for some of that cold Arctic air to come south, but that is pretty far into the future. So we'll save those questions for next week, because Arctic outbreaks are very difficult to forecast beyond 5 to 7 days in the future. So here's what we're looking at right now. There's that little winter storm trying to get going in Nebraska and Iowa, and it will succeed going into tonight and into tomorrow. Freezing rain developing across Iowa overnight, and of course those snows in the Sierras. Intensification in the Bay Area as this strong, potent wave comes out of the Pacific that we talked about earlier. Texas warms up into the 70s for tomorrow. Lots of tropical air on tap. This cold front stagnates around the Interstate 30 corridor in Arkansas and Texas itself. Snows and rains continue in the northwestern U.S. up into Nevada through much of the day Saturday. Then we go into Sunday. A warming trend across much of the central U.S. due to this deep southerly flow all the way up into Minnesota and Manitoba. Precipitable waters, as we mentioned, in the 97th to 99th percentile around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. IVTs up to 700 to 900 in parts of the central Mississippi River Valley for Sunday night. And that's going to develop this area of precipitation, showers, all the way up into Wisconsin and Minnesota that will all be in the form of rain. We start to see mixed precipitation in some parts of northern Pennsylvania and New York, but rain further out to the west as this frontal system comes together on Monday. And we start to see another Alberta Clipper developing up there in North Dakota, and that will produce some snows from South Dakota into the Chicago area. But overall, a rather dry front. Lots of cold air advection indicated into the Central Plains and into the Four Corners area and Nevada as well. This could indicate maybe a Santa Ana wind event for Wednesday and Thursday, but it looked like those conditions rapidly slackened off later on Thursday, so not very much left by that date. Northwesterly flow indicated all the way into the southeastern U.S. from the northern plains, and here's another outbreak of cold air southward. So with those minus 20s up there in Nunavut, this could bring so much colder air southward as we approach the holidays. And the very last frame that I have, it's going to be this one for the end of next weekend. Some indication of a major winter storm in the northeast. However, this far out, the confidence in that is very low. And that's all I have for this edition of Forecast Lab. Hope you enjoyed the program. We'll be back again on Monday for the Patreon supporters and on Wednesday for everybody else. Hope you have a great weekend. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.